Next, a discussion on modernization, policy, and the future of the FDA. Please welcome Marty Makary, Commissioner of Food and Drugs at the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, Kyle Diamantas, Deputy Commissioner for Human Foods at the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and moderator Dave Asprey, founder, Bulletproof, and Danger Coffee.
There's so many questions I want to ask. Now, Marty, you're a best-selling author and a surgeon and a researcher and a commissioner. So I just want to know, when you're done, do you know which big pharma company you're going to go to? I'm just kidding, because you're not one of those.
I have actually taken a voluntary pledge never to work for Big Pharma for the rest of my life.
This really is a new way of looking at it, and I'm so incredibly honored to be able to be here and chat with you, and knowing that we're working towards common goals. And one of the things that blew me away was the announcement about women's hormones. How did you come to make this conclusion? How did you get it to happen so fast?
Well, as a physician, I've seen groupthink in medicine go astray. We got opioids are non-addictive wrong for 15 years. We got saturated fat causes heart disease wrong for 50 years. That's a war we're going to end.
Yes.
This man here is going to end the war on natural saturated fat that the government has waged. We got peanut allergy recommendations wrong, telling parents to avoid peanut butter until a kid turns 3 to prevent peanut allergies. That causes peanut allergies. And you see the groupthink again and again lead us astray. And here was one that was obvious. A groupthink, a fear machine that started 23 years ago that tragically described hormone replacement therapy as a carcinogen and has resulted in 50 million women being denied the life-changing, life-saving benefits of hormone replacement therapy because of a dogma. So we ended that dogma this week.
Now, I've seen some criticism online about that decision. What are you hearing from people who could possibly oppose this?
Yes, so the criticism we got was that we're moving too fast. And I get this criticism.
23 years is too fast, just so you guys understand, right?
No, we get this criticism for a lot, especially the work that Kyle is doing on the food side. The best deputy commissioner for food in the history of the FDA right here. We're not wasting time. We're getting stuff done, and we're moving fast. They were talking about removing one food dye from the U.S. food supply for 35 years at the FDA. We came in within weeks. We announced the removal of all 9 petroleum-based food dyes from the entire U.S. food supply by the end of next year. They were talking about slightly reducing animal testing requirements for drugs at the FDA. We came in there, it was a mess. We were still requiring 2 species of animal testing, even if a drug was approved in Europe and used in 1 million people. And so we are announcing the roadmap to eliminate animal testing at the FDA. We're going to keep going. We're not wasting time. We make our decision letters, like our rejection letters for a new product, public information now so the world can see. If we don't accept, if we reject a product, the world deserves to know why. And so they were talking about that for 20 years, and we did it in a matter of weeks. And we're going to keep going. We are going to keep going. We're not going to work at government speed. We're going to work at the speed of the American people.
What is the FDA going to look like a few years from now? Like, paint a picture of the future, because you're making awesome changes really fast. That's enough time. I feel like there's a new world, but tell us what it's like.
I would like to see, personally, the end of the medicalization of ordinary life. We have now, if you take a step back and look at what we're doing, we've done a terrible thing to doctors. We've told them, here's what you diagnose and treat. We create a reflex through this rote memorization and regurgitation culture of school and residency. We take these bright creative minds, we burn them out, we put them on this treadmill of diagnose, treat, billing and coding. We're going to measure you by your throughput. And guess what? Nobody has time to stop and ask, what are we doing? We don't have time to talk about the quality of your sleep, or what you're eating, or the role of food as medicine, or the microbiome. Maybe we need to talk about school lunches as much as we talk about insulin prescribing. Maybe we need to talk about environmental exposures that cause cancer, not just chemotherapy. And so we've got to have this new discussion, and we are hoping that this MAHA movement that we're all a part of, that all of you are driving and supporting, that this movement will change the culture in medicine so we can talk about not just treating a blood test or a finding, but instead treating a person. And so I think we can get there. We want to see, my predecessor at the FDA, when asked what his #1 priority was, he said, it's fighting misinformation. Maybe probably was referring to people like me spreading it. For all Well, our #1 priority is not censoring Americans. Our #1 priority is to deliver more cures and meaningful treatments for the American people and healthier food for children, and we're going to get it done.
Kyle, what changes in food are we going to see?
Yeah, it's a great question. And look, I think one of the things that if you look at the food supply and FDA's regulation of foods, one of the things we want to do is to empower the people. And that's what part of the MAHA movement has really done. It's ushered in this change. We've taken action, quick action, the artificial dyes as an example. We've got grass reform out there, ultra-processed foods. But really the most impactful thing that we can do at FDA is to continue to educate and allow the moms and dads and the consumers to take better control of their health. I firmly believe that we can't regulate our way to ending the chronic disease crisis or to ending the problems that we have in America. We are the #1 country in healthcare spend. We're 47th in life expectancy. And look, we regulate a vast size of the United States economy. 80% of all foods in this country, FDA regulates. 200,000 facilities, 30,000 farms, and we do all of that in a budget that's about half the size of the Dallas School District. So incredibly small budget compared to the remit that we're tasked with. And so we're never gonna be able to solve all of these problems simply by regulating our way out of it. I strongly believe that. And so the MAHA movement has been so powerful in that regard that you heard Vonnie talk about on the last panel, people are now reading food labels. I saw a poll the other day, 74% of people are actively trying to avoid ultra-processed foods. We had data last year that showed that less than 50% of Americans had even heard the term ultra-processed going back last year. So it's being able to have a societal change where the policies we enact will push that and help advocate that, but it's also this MAHA movement that's coalesced around Secretary Kennedy that's really driving this change, and I think will continue to drive change for years to come.
Are we going to keep seeing the word healthy on foods that aren't?
We are not. So there's a lot of great regulatory changes we have coming at FDA. The commissioner talked about our work in artificial dyes. You heard about some of that on the last panel. We've worked with companies like Walmart, who are removing a number of additives from their products. We'll continue to work with those companies. We're tackling what's called the GRAS loophole. For those of you that don't know, for decades, since the 1950s, companies have essentially been able to introduce foods into the market or ingredients into foods without any oversight from the government and any knowledge by Americans. So we want to close that GRAS loophole. We've got rulemaking that we've already prepared. We hope to have that out in December or January, but no longer will companies be able to introduce an ingredient in the food supply unless Americans know about it.
Wow. If you close the GRAS loophole, is that going to close all the things that are already considered GRAS? Or you can't talk about that yet?
So that it won't, but we have a solution for that too. So this is sort of a belt and suspenders approach. when you talk about GRAS reform, that really is the pre-market side, right? So you're addressing new novel ingredients that people want to introduce in the food supply. We've also stood up a post-market office. So this is the first time in FDA's history that we've taken a proactive, systematic step to establish a post-market review office solely for foods. Believe it or not, up until this administration, FDA did not actively review food ingredients. So once something was in the market, it was essentially grandfathered in the market with very little oversight unless there was a citizen's petition or an outbreak or something else that necessitated that. We're now getting rid of that. We've stood up a post-market office for review. We've created a scheme that's got multifactorial prongs to rank various chemicals. So it's going to look at, is an ingredient or a chemical banned in another country? Is it something Congress is interested in? Is it something that's used in vulnerable populations, like for infants and the elderly? We're going to rank, create a score, and then we'll apply that, our post-market framework, to those chemicals. So we've got a number in review now: BHA, BHT, titanium dioxide, a number of phthalates, ADA, a number of chemicals.
That just makes me so profoundly happy because I don't want those in my food. Thank you. Now, Marty, that sounded like a list of all the excipients and binders in pharmaceuticals. Why are we putting these things in pharmaceuticals if they're not necessary for efficacy? Are there any plans to address that as well? Like Benadryl doesn't have to be pink, right?
So we, first of all, we have tremendous convening power at the FDA, and we need to use that convening power for good. The FDA regulates 20% of the US economy. We have offices in 50 countries. It's everything from borders and Chinese vapes coming across the border to medical devices and microwave ovens and MRI machines to wearables to new drugs to the food supply. And so we can use our convening power to ask companies to do the right thing. And they want to be on good terms with the FDA. And so we want to appeal to the best in them. And sometimes you can win more bees with honey than fire. Now, we'll use every tool in the toolbox, but we are seeing now a tremendous response. Walmart, Sam's Club, I mean, a whole tier of chemicals beyond the artificial food dyes. And let's be honest, that's not a silver bullet that's going to make us healthy again, but it is an important and incredible historic milestone step in the right direction. So we have to keep going, and we're going to appeal to the best in these companies. On the drug sides, we're not going to waste time. I've been at the bedside. I've had to break bad news more times than I'd like to admit. Why does it take 10 to 12 years for a new cure to come to market? Do we really think if you have the cure for breast cancer, we need to just wait it out and let the process play out? Or can we run more continuous trials? Can we look at study endpoints in the cloud? Can we do the lion's share of the review before the final clinical trial reads out? I'd like to see a cure or meaningful treatment in our term for type 1 diabetes, for forms of childhood blindness and deafness, for certain types of stage 4 cancer. We've already seen some potentially promising treatments that melt away tumors, specifically GI tumors of a certain genetic mutation subtype, where you don't even need surgery or chemotherapy or radiation. The tumor literally melts away. So we issued a priority voucher. We have a program to get decisions out in weeks, which is unheard of. Again, you know, we get this, you're moving too fast. Well, we saw an article in the New England Journal of Medicine, for example, a month ago, that showed for a certain subtype of congenital deafness in children, this novel gene therapy restored hearing in 3 out of 12, and in about 7 out of 12, they got an improvement in their hearing. Well, they were otherwise deaf. What are we waiting for? Within hours, we called the company. We said, let's see this, data that you have it, and we issued them a voucher immediately to get a priority review within weeks. We're going to keep moving with other potentially promising treatments. We're not in a receive-only mode. We're not playing, a government librarian that's going to be angry that you want to borrow a book. We are not in receive-only mode. We go into the pipeline and we ask our reviewers, I personally ask our reviewers on the front lines, are you seeing anything that looks amazing? anything that gives you chills up your spine, even if it's in an animal study or phase 2 clinical trial. And if they say yes, let's take a look at that data. Let's call the company and get the data, and we can do an independent review without any contamination from the industry. We can do an independent review to deliver more cures and meaningful treatments for the American public.
One thing that's going to do is radically lower the amount of investment required for new cures because you're moving faster, which means the number of companies that come to market. So I think this is going to change the world because there's so many good researchers who know something, they want to do something, and I don't have $200 million in 10 years to do it. You solve that problem, the innovation is going to go crazy. So I'm so excited about this. Now, I want to ask about something else. Direct-to-consumer ads for Big Pharma. What's your stance on it and why?
Yeah. Well, maybe some people here love watching people singing and dancing nonstop on television or marching from one fake town to, I don't know where they're going. And you're listening to these things and you're watching them around the clock and you think, did they just say sudden death? And we have 2 regulations on the books. One is to say that you cannot create a misleading impression and you have to present a fair balance of information. A lot of companies are not doing that. And there's another regulation that says you can put some of the side effect stuff on another website or in another place. We're closing that loophole. So they now have to put it in the ad. And so we're enforcing the existing regulations, which has not been done in the last administration. For example, the FDA used to send out 100 enforcement letters a year back when pharma ads were rare. Remember when we were kids and they were rare? Now, I was watching the World Series. I don't know what they were pitching, these medications. I don't even recognize it. And I'm like, okay, I give up. I'll take it. I'll take it. I don't even know what it is. But they're pushing these medicines nonstop on TV. Look, they have a right to free speech like every other American, but we are going to enforce the regulations. We used to send out 100 enforcement letters from the FDA decades ago each year. We learned in the Biden administration in 2003, they sent out 1 letter that year, and last year they sent out 0 letters. So within weeks of us learning this, we sent out, I personally signed 1,500 warning letters and 100 cease and desist letters to the industry.
So impressed. What about marketing brightly colored, nasty, unhealthy food to kids? Seems like the same problem.
Yeah, that is something that in the last MAHA report from several months ago was identified as a potential action item for the FDA, HHS, and the Federal Trade Commission to get together and decide if there's ways to potentially restrict marketing. So that's something we're actively looking at in coordination with the White House and Federal Trade Commission. But the issue's no different. I mean, you see these commercials, that's why they use food dyes, right? These are disproportionately used in foods to target youth. And you see the advertising that also follows suit. And so it's something we're really interested in. It's part of our broader push to really tackle the chronic disease issues that are targeted at our youth population. To the commissioner's point, artificial dyes are not a silver bullet. And look, people have criticized it and said, well, the dyes aren't really addressing chronic disease. But the reality is, products that have artificial dyes have 140% more sugar on average than products that don't have the artificial dyes, and we know they're attracting to youth. So again, it's another tool in the toolkit that we're using, and we're gonna take every step we can to make sure that our youth no longer suffer from chronic disease.
Beautiful. I think kids are the most important because we have healthy kids, they'll have healthy kids. And so what you're doing over the next few years is going to affect multiple generations. And the science says that epigenetics is real, so let's fix it fast the way you're doing, and I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, it's not a willpower problem that our kids are sick. This is not their fault.
Yeah.
And we have to be honest. If we're going to rebuild public trust, which we try to do every day, we have to show some humility. This is not their fault. Look at what we do to kids. We rattle them in the middle of the night in their sleep cycle, disrupting their circadian rhythm to put them on a school bus when it's dark. They sit in a classroom with less natural light exposure than most inmates in a penitentiary. We load them with high glycemic indices that spike their insulin levels all day long. Now they have snack lists. We didn't eat snacks, during class and between class. They have snack lists of it's all highly processed foods, the sort of foods that Kyle's talking about. And then we hit them again with a high glycemic load, and we tell them to sit still at a desk for 7 hours, and they can't do it. They struggle. And what do? We drug our nation's kids at scale. It's wrong. We have to address it and be honest with the problem.
As a guy who hit 300 pounds when I was 23 years old, I love that you said it's not a willpower problem. And the way you're explaining there, all of those inputs, I would have never imagined a few years ago that we'd be on stage having that conversation. So I'd like you guys to thank our new team in charge of the drugs and the food, because this is a new world. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. Well done.